spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
We'll say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner. Welcome to 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football. I am your host, Brian McFadden. It is Tuesday, September 27th, 2022. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. This is our fantasy look ahead. We're going to be looking ahead to week 4. As we've done the past couple episodes, we'll take some viewer questions. If you guys have start-sit questions, just kind of throw them in. We'll try to get to them. Otherwise, we're going to be talking waiver wires, buy-sell candidates, defensive streamers, you name it, we'll probably cover it. And back again for, I think, the third time, Will Tighe of Bettor Fantasy. Welcome back to 30 Minutes of Football.
Sure. Let's go. We're back. We're back.
There you go.
Week 3.
He's got the swag. I don't know. CBS Sports is a little bit of a strange choice for your hat, but you got to get some swag for the head as well.
They should be paying me for this.
They really, that's what I mean. Like, don't wear anything on you unless you're getting some sort of compensation. You guys know how we do it. We're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk fantasy in our 30-minute segment. Without further ado, 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football starts now. Will, you know the format. You're going to get to choose whether you ask or receive the first question, which way you want to go.
I'll go ahead and receive the first question.
Nice. Taking the ball first. It's the way to do it. So we're going to go ahead and start with waiver wires. This is what the people want to know, so we're going to keep the format fairly simple. Do you have one or even a couple top waiver wire ads? I think there's some obvious ones this week, so we'll start off there.
Yeah, I think Zay Jones is the one that comes to mind for me. Fairly interesting just because he's not owned in a lot of leagues, right? So you're probably going to be able to get him. You're probably going to be able to not have to spend a lot of fab on him.
Right.
He's looking like the clear second choice in Jacksonville, and that might be an offense all of a sudden that is able to sustain 2 wide receivers, which is fairly interesting. So he
had 10 targets, I believe, in week 3.
Yeah, so he's the interesting one for me. Obviously, Khalil Herbert's the name that everybody's going to be gunning for.
Yes.
And if you know me, you know I'm the Khalil Herbert guy.
We talked about him on this show
2
weeks ago.
I love Khalil Herbert more than life itself. So if you can get him, go for it. We'll see how long Montgomery's going to be out for. So it might be just a 1-week thing. But, I mean, he looked incredible. Like, he's him. So
I mean, you were on our show, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. One of the questions you asked me was Khalil Herbert versus Montgomery, and we were both on the Herbert train. So just listen to us, guys. Just follow. Come on the show. We'll tell you who you need to do. I definitely love Herbert. Was the most obvious one. That's why I definitely won. Zay Jones is interesting. He was on. I actually have him in a couple best ball lineups because I was able to get him a lot cheaper than Christian Kirk. But I do think he's the clear number 2. You know, Marvin Jones, there was a question there, but Zay Jones, there was a lot of reports in training camp that he was showing a lot of chemistry with Trevor Lawrence, and I think you hit the nail on the head saying this Jaguars offense is a real thing. This is not like a one-week blip against a division opponent. You know, they just destroyed the Chargers, who have a very good defense. I don't think this is the last we're going to see of Zay Jones' name. Love that. A couple mentions from my side. Jamal Williams is another one of those kind of obvious picks if he's not already on a team. Probably would have been a fairly popular handcuff pick, so it might be less likely or more likely to be rostered than Khalil Herbert. But if he is available in your league, definitely worth some fob because we know he gets usage even when DeAndre Swift is in. You know, they split in week 1. They were splitting carries. Jamal Williams got some passing work and definitely got some goal line work. And now, according to Dan Campbell, it looks like DeAndre Swift's going to miss at least 2 weeks to heal a shoulder injury. Now, we remember he also had an ankle injury, so the injuries are starting to pile up for DeAndre Swift. Multiple reasons to go after Jamal Williams. And if we're staying on this running back injury train, why not throw Alexander Mattison in the mix? Even though it looks like Cook is going to be back, he's another running back who has an injury history. Mattison, they plugged him in. He immediately scored a touchdown. He's shown value as a very, very strong handcuff for Mattison. A couple more guys I want to mention on the rookie side, and then we'll move on to you asking the next question. Romeo Dobbs, if he's still available, get him. Like, you should have already gotten him. He shouldn't be on the waiver wire, but I was looking at some of these ESPN stats, and apparently he's still available in a lot of leagues. And then Treyland Burks, actually, I do think might be available. A lot of hype coming out, replacing A.J. Brown in Tennessee. Not putting up the numbers yet, but he's leading the Titans in routes run. He's getting out there. He's got the explosiveness. That's the guy you want to jump on.
Awesome. So my first question, and Brian, I kind of have a theme for my questions today. It's going to be
a themed show. I love it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of who'd you rather. So a lot of guys that we're starting to change our opinions on, and these questions before the season started might have been blasphemous, but now with 3 weeks of data behind us, it starts to look a little bit questionable for some guys, and looking like some guys are on the upswing. So without further ado, first question: Curtis Samuel or Terry McLaurin? Who would you rather have the rest of the season?
The rest of the season, I'm going to have to say McLaurin. I know that Samuel has looked better and produced better early on, but I think we finally started to see McLaurin. Like, the cream rises to the top. Mm-hmm. Samuel is a great, let's say, I don't want to say gadget player. I feel like that devalues him a little bit, but he has been used in multiple ways. He has gotten a lot of targets and just played various roles. But Terry McLaurin, I think, is the talent of a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL, and that kind of talent is going to shine through. Washington is going to be playing from behind a lot. And I think you're going to see Carson Wentz trusting more and more the most talented wide receiver, the most talented weapon he has on that offense in Terry McLaurin, as they continue to play from behind and let up 9 sacks like they did against the Eagles. There's going to be a lot of opportunity. I would say both guys are valuable right now. Jahan Dotson, even Logan Thomas, just because they're going to be passing a lot out of necessity because of game script. But I'm erring between those two. I'm going McLaurin. Do you have a preference there?
Yeah, I would probably stick with McLaurin too now, Brian, just because, like you were saying, it's a talent thing for me. I think it's a question of your play style and your management style. Do you want to have the guy that is more talented, or do you want to have the guy that probably has a bit of a higher floor because they are getting him involved in the rushing game? And so I think there's no like obvious answer here, but I would personally still go McLaurin. But it's just crazy that we're asking this question.
That's a question I don't think any of us predicted we would be doing going into week 4 of the NFL season. David Morazzo in the chat said that he picked up Khalil Herbert week 1.
Good
so
man.
I'm going to assume, and I don't want to hear whether I'm right or not. I'm going to assume it's because both Will and I told you to, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But he does also have a question. David asks, and I'll let you take this one first, Antonio Gibson or Rashad Bateman at flex? So here's a start-sit question for you.
Yeah, good question.
The Eagles play the Cowboys, and the Ravens play the Bills.
Yeah. Boy, I think if you want to go with Bateman, I think that's a fair option. Antonio Gibson against the Cowboys. We saw what the Cowboys just did against the Giants offensive line last night. It was not great. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Antonio Gibson's quite the same player as Saquon Barkley, obviously, where he can start to create on his own when that offensive line is getting blown up. So I would probably lean Bateman just because Lamar Jackson also looks incredible so far this year.
Yeah, agreed. And that Bills secondary is really banged up. They were without both of their starting safeties. They still don't have Tre'Davious White, who looks like he'll be out at least one more week. And the Ravens are going to need to put up points against this Bills team. So as good as the Bills defense is in general, I think that the secondary is the one spot where they can be attacked. The Dolphins showed that a little bit in beating them this week. And shout out to Miami. I think I'm going to shout out the Dolphins every week while they're undefeated. Really curious to see where they end up in the power rankings tomorrow. Antonio Gibson is a solid play, but I'm agreed with Will. I think Bateman is the better choice here.
That's a good problem to have.
That's a very good problem to have. Nice. It's good. It's good to have depth.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about some buy low candidates. Will, do you have one or two names that even after 3 weeks in, you still think the best is in front of them? This is a good candidate in your fantasy league to trade for at a discounted rate.
Yeah, I think Aaron Jones is interesting. So I think the theme of these elite running backs that we drafted in the first round or two to be, weekly plug and play, 10-point floor, 30-point potentials, Eckler, Kamara, Mixon, Jonathan Taylor even. These are all guys that have underperformed through the first 3 weeks. We're not sure how we feel about them the rest of the year. I think I would look at Aaron Jones as the guy who's going to potentially exceed what you could get for him the most out of that group, just because I think last week was much more so the Buccaneers defense than the Green Bay offense. The Bucs D is really good. It's really solid. Granted, they didn't have Akeem Hicks, but still they're a great group. I think Aaron Jones is still going to be able to get work in the passing game. We saw him go off for 33 points the week before. If you can buy low on Aaron Jones, I think that's probably a savvy move.
I'm going to stick in the Green Bay backfield, but I'm going to go with A.J. Dillon, mainly because I'm not sure you'll be able to buy Jones, even though he didn't have a great week in week 2. I think a lot of people are still remembering how much he went off for 30-plus points in week 2. But A.J. Dillon hasn't quite had that game yet. But I think he's capable of it. I think there are going to be games where Dillon is clear the lead back because he's bruising between the tackles, whereas Jones is kind of outside running style doesn't work as well against particular opponents. So I think we're going to see some big weeks from Dillon. And I think because he's RB26 right now in standard 1-point PPR leagues, that to me is a prime buy low candidate because I don't think he'll finish at RB26. I think he can at least finish as an RB2. So you're talking about RB20 or better if you're in a 10-team league. So I think there's an opportunity there. Chase Edmonds as well with Miami. RB31. Now, yes, there's that whole Shanahan style, Mike McDaniel, Mostert got more carries than Edmonds in week 2. But a couple things I like here. One, that Dolphins offense is legit. They're going to be getting scoring a lot of points. And 2, Edmonds seems to be the preferred goal line back. And he did score 2 touchdowns in that manner against the Bills. So I still think that because people don't have high views of the Dolphins backfield in general, I think you can get him for a low price, especially since he's still RB31. And how about a repeat buy low, Rashad Penny? I'm still feeling like he's, Travis Homer is now dinged up. Yes, they have Kenneth Walker, but I think Rashad Penny has shown he's the better pure runner and is certainly better as an NFL running back, as 3-down back right now. Do you have any thoughts on Rashad Penny as a buy low candidate?
Yeah.
We're talking about Seahawks here. I mean, I guess there's only so much of an opinion you can have. All right, so let's move off the buy lows. Let's hear your next question.
Yeah, so sticking on that, who'd you rather, Kamara or James Robinson?
Oh, Robinson all day.
Really?
All day. Yeah, I have not been high on Kamara. Kamara's the metrics from last year. His was very much volume driven last year in this Saints offense. No Drew Brees. They gave Kamara a ton of carries and he produced, but his yards per carry went down an entire yard. It was the first time in his career he had not been over 4 yards per carry. He actually finished around 3.6, 3.7, even with all that volume. That started to worry me. Has not had a great start to this year. Fumbled, had a key fumble last week. Had injury issues and missed week 2. I don't like the Saints offense. They're even worse than I thought they would be. Whereas James Robinson, we mentioned that Jaguars offense earlier, clearly the lead back. ETN will have a role, but Robinson is showing that the Achilles injury, apparently he's superhuman. It did not slow him down at all. He's going right back to it. He's involved in the passing game. He's getting, 20 plus carries in certain games. The usage is there with the running back field that is so thinner than ever right now with production. Robinson's producing, Kamara's not. It was an easy choice for me. Do you disagree?
I have Alvin Kamara in every single league this year, pretty much. So it's hard for me to be objective here. Look, the case against Kamara is definitely the lack of volume in the passing game specifically. Like with Jameis Winston now, he's just not checking it down to the running backs as much. I think that's the big concern for me on the Kamara side. I think he's still very talented as a runner, one of the best in the league. I think the injury was bugging him last week. Clearly, he wasn't right. So, boy, it's tough for me to say Robinson for sure, but he has looked really good. He has gotten the volume. I'd still lean Kamara, and I'm trying to say that as objectively as I can. I think he's just the more special player. But, you could ask me again in 3 weeks, and I might have a different answer.
I think one of the keys to fantasy is being able to get out ahead of a player direction, whether that's a player that's rising or a player that's falling before it actually happens. A guy that like Kamara, who's been so good in the fantasy world for so long, I can get that hold on. It's not a reflection as much as him as it is maybe a little bit his age, but also the offensive line is not what it has been in years past, and that offense in general just seems stuck in the mud. That worries me, and he's not getting the volume that he got last year. So I'm sure I'll have you on the show again. We'll revisit the James Robinson versus Kamara discussion later this year. All right, so let's go finish it out. About 2 minutes left till halftime with some selling high candidates. Who's somebody who's had a good week or a good couple weeks who you still think, it's a little bit of a flash in the pan. Get rid of them while you can.
That's a really good question. I would even say maybe Jamal Williams. I know we talked about him a little bit earlier. He's good. He's solid. But if you can potentially give him to the DeAndre Swift owner for something that might be worth more than he is normally, I think that's an interesting option. Gosh, who's been balling out recently? Who do you have? I want to think about that for a second.
Sure. So I have a couple things, and it's a lot of times recency bias is one of the best ways to sell high. Ezekiel Elliott actually scored a touchdown last night, and he ran hard. Pollard still outrushed him, but the fact that it was a primetime game, the fact that a lot of eyeballs are on him, and Zeke is one of those like Kamara who has a lot of history of success in fantasy. You see him, if you are a guy who you might have this guy in your league who's a Cowboys fan who just likes Zeke, saw him score a touchdown, saw him running tough against the Giants. You might have an ability to sell him high. But Derrick Henry is my big one here. Because I think Henry's best days are behind him. This is another reflection of the offensive line in Tennessee is much worse. The offense is much worse. They don't have as many dynamic weapons. A defense can key in on Henry more. And he just had a good game. Still wasn't great stats. He had 20 rushes for 85 yards, like just barely over 4 yards a carry. Most of his production came from a rushing touchdown, and because he actually got, I think, 5 or 6 targets in the passing game, which is not usually part of his game. So I think that's prime setup for a sell high for Henry, because I don't think he'll maintain that. I'm going to let you answer in the second half because I'm going to throw one more name in there. How about George Pickens, just because he got that crazy catch on Thursday Night Football?
That was awesome.
It was fantastic, but that's the kind of thing, if you got guys who were high on him in training camp and all that stuff coming out, makes the great catch, they could sell high, get something higher for him, because that Steelers offense sucks. All right, I real quick, I put up in the chat, you do it. I see the Bettor Fantasy symbol in the chat, so I'm guessing that's somebody looking good, Will, with a nice pumped up. Wanted to put that in the chat from Corm 1993. All right, guys, it is halftime. As always, Legit Football, legitfootball.com. If you're listening, if you're watching, first of all, subscribe. I keep forgetting. If you're watching or listening to this for the first time, hit the subscribe button. We've seen a nice uptick. We're getting close to 100 subscribers on YouTube, which is really cool. We do this show 5 days a week live. We've got Monday Night Football and recaps on Mondays for the week before. We've got Thursday Night Football. We're doing live viewer questions on Thursdays, Fantasy Tuesday, Power Rankings Wednesday, and Pick'ems on Friday. We got all sorts of content, so don't forget to like and subscribe. And sign up for legitfootball.com. I won't go into the whole spiel. You guys hear it all the time. Let's hear about some Bettor Fantasy from Will.
Yeah, Bettor Fantasy. It's an app me and my friends started. Basically, we let you sync your fantasy football leagues and then bet on the matchups. We present overs, unders, spreads, money lines for each matchup in your fantasy league. And then you're able to bet with our free-to-play currency and then win prizes in our shop when you hit your bets. If you're in one of the 21 states that we are live in, we offer DFS cash contests, so player prop over-unders, in our new survival game, which is a live in-game betting experience. That's a ton of fun. Each quarter, you're given a new player prop. Like last night, we did Saquon 26.5 rushing plus receiving yards for the first quarter. And so you go quarter by quarter. If you get 3 out of 4 right, you win. It's a fun way to do it. So would love for you guys to check us out, and would really love anybody's feedback. If you do give us a look, that's really critical to us right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Bettor Fantasy. That is Bettor Fantasy. If you're listening and not watching on YouTube, check out Bettor Fantasy. It's on Android and iPhone now. I am a user. I love betting against my league mates, and I'm looking forward to trying these survival DFS stuff as well. All right, Will, ready for the second half here?
Yep, totally ready. I've got my guy. Did we kick off?
Okay. Oh yeah, he'll get the timer going. Did we kick off? I love that.
I don't want to
sticking with the theme.
Penalty.
Yeah. Okay. The timer operator is lagging. We are now in the second half. Go.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's my sell high.
I was considering him. I want to hear your thoughts. He was almost on my sell high list.
Yeah, he's a whatever player to me. I think he's fine. I don't think he's anything special. But you could get really good value for him right now from somebody who's sort of just looking at the stats and the box score and saying, okay, Clyde Edwards-Helaire's been putting up some good numbers recently. He's on Kansas City offense. Let me go ahead and sell you something pretty solid for CH. Like if you can get a really solid wide receiver for him, or potentially one of the tight end options that are there's like 4 of them that are viable week to week. I think that's a savvy play. I think he's looked fine. He hasn't looked great by any means, and they like to use that rotation pretty heavily. Jerick McKinnon outsnapped him, I think, last week. So CEH would be a guy that I would be selling high on.
I was considering him. I was looking into some of the metrics. He is RB6 right now in PPR leagues. The question is, can he keep that up? I'm not a fan of his talent-wise. I never was really high on him. I think we've kind of seen his ceiling already, and this might be as good as he gets. So that is literally the definition of a sell high. Are you selling at this player's peak? Can you get more for him than you think he's worth? I like CEH. Like I said, I almost included him on my list. All right, next question coming from you.
All right, ready? This one's kind of crazy.
Ooh, crazy. Bring it.
It's not that crazy. Cordell Patterson or Austin Eckler?
That is kind of crazy. That is crazy. Wow.
That's tough.
That is the first, like the other two I felt were pretty straightforward, easy. This is seemingly like if anybody asked this in the preseason, we were like, "What? That's the stupidest question ever." Cordell Patterson had one lucky year, but we have seen now 2 games in a row where Patterson looks great, over 100 yards rushing. This is a Falcons offense that is going to utilize him on the run and the pass, and for whatever reason, this Eckler is in a little bit of a timeshare. You're seeing that they're getting Sony Michel involved. They just picked him up, and Michel is getting a lot of usage. You still see Joshua Kelly getting usage there. I have to think long-term that Eckler's going to rebound and will finish with more fantasy points than Cordell Patterson. I love it right now. I have Patterson in multiple dynasty leagues. I got him super cheap. I think I picked him up as a waiver wire in one of them, traded really cheap for him in the other. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I still think Eckler's talent will win out. I still think he has the potential with the rest of the season. I think the Chargers will hopefully rebound. They look like they're getting their center Corey Linsley back, although they did just lose Rashawn Slater for the year. Man, the Chargers and their injury luck. But yeah, gun to my head, I'm going to have to choose Eckler. How about you?
Yeah, I think I would choose Eckler too, but it's one of those things where if you're the Eckler owner, right, and somebody offers you Patterson, you're saying, no way, I'm not doing that. But then if you're the Patterson owner and somebody offers you Eckler, you might not do it, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, you're not slamming accept. It's more like, yeah.
Maybe you could throw in a wide receiver too. It's tough. I would say Eckler though, just based off the fact that we've seen him do it before, but we've also seen Cordell Patterson do it before, and he looks really good. He's a big back. He's bigger than Eckler. He's probably going to be able to hold up longer. I think the play with Eckler is you hope that the Chargers can rebound, and obviously they have a much more talented quarterback. So I think that's the reason I would stay with Eckler.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe they should start utilizing him more, and they can rebound from their 1 and 2 start. Maybe this is a scenario where they start realizing that they have this amazing weapon and actually get him involved more to try to win some games. Whereas I think Cordell Patterson, I don't think there's up from here. He's playing great, but the ceiling is still higher for Eckler.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a question I wanted to ask last week. It's a slightly less relevant, but I still want to ask it. Is Tua a QB1 in fantasy going forward? So I had originally intended to ask. My guess last week, we actually did not get to this question, but it's still viable. He came down a little bit, forgetting the injury. Let's assume that he's healthy. Apparently, he's not in concussion protocol. Did not look like that to me. But coming off the 6-touchdown game, he was the leading passer in the NFL before last week. Was able to at least move the ball some and beat the Bills. Is he a QB1 in fantasy for the rest of the season?
I think so, Brian. I'm doing a little list ad hoc right now on my notepad, and I'm having trouble getting. I think he's in that like 12 to 14 range. You know what I mean? I think it's a question of do you want to put him ahead of guys like Brady and Rodgers, which just seems crazy. But you look at his receivers compared to theirs, and yeah, it's kind of an obvious answer. You're not going to put him up with obviously the Hurts, the Allens, the Lamars, the Herberts, or the Mahomes even. But I think he slides into that 10 to 14 spot pretty well. And if you wanted to make the case for him being a top 12 guy, I think he can.
Yeah, I think this is a reflection of the weapons he has and a reflection of the McDaniel offense that I think you kind of have to consider him at least QB 12 or better, which makes him a QB 1, which kind of answers the question. I'm with you. I don't like to, I'm a Dolphins fan, so I always have to check my homerism at the door. It's like, do I really feel this way? Sometimes I do the opposite. I try to downplay my interest in a team because I'm like, I don't want to get too excited about these Dolphins. But I just think when you have those two weapons, you compared them to Rodgers and Brady. We saw that Bucks Packers game this weekend, and it's just they don't. Rodgers is in a little bit better position. Romeo Dobbs started to come about, but Brady's throwing to Cole Beasley, who was signed a day before. Russell Gage is getting like 13 targets, and Gage is a fine receiver, but not a wide receiver 1. And then you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who I think are both in the top 6 in fantasy points and wide receivers right now. somebody's got to get those. Somebody's got to throw to get those points. So I think just as a reflection of the talent of those two guys, you're gonna get points from Tua. I'm with you here. All right, we just had a question pop up in the chat from jcribs881. Going off the Gibson question, here's an offered trade. ETN, so Travis Etienne and Treyland Burke. So I'm guessing you said Burke with an E. For Gibson and MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
It's interesting. I think it's pretty fair. I don't think MVS is going to do much for the Kansas City offense.
Yeah. That offense has got so many targets. I mean, Juju would be the option, but even he's not a slam dunk. I just think short of Travis Kelce, there's no clear and obvious pass catcher there. Here's the thing. I'll kind of break this down, and then we can kind of make our consideration. So Etienne, tons of hype in the offseason. He was injured last year. We didn't get to see him. Has shown some flashes, but James Robinson, we said earlier, clearly the number one back in Jacksonville. Treyland Burke, I mentioned as somebody that you should be targeting as a waiver wire candidate because I think he actually his best days are ahead of him. Lots of routes run. He has shown some of that ability of why the Titans drafted him in the first round versus Gibson, who, look, Brian Robinson is going to be coming back soon. Apparently he's ahead of schedule. And then Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who could get 0 points in any given week in that Kansas City offense. So I think I'm leaning Etienne Burks here. How about you?
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning to. Just based off of what you just said there, I think Burks has some interesting talent upside. Etienne, we still think he's got some potential. I think he and Gibson are going to be sort of in that same boat when Robinson comes back. And so just given the fact that I would probably rather have Burks than MBS, I would not do that trade.
I'm with you. It's you have give in the parentheses, J Crib. So I'm guessing you have Travis Etienne and Treyland Burks. Keep them. Don't give them away. At least not for these two guys.
Do the old counter. Say instead of MBS, I want a little bit of a better receiver upgrade.
Yeah, exactly. If you can get a better receiver than MVS, maybe you consider it. J Crib says, "Thanks, guys. Was thinking the same thing. Good. We're here to validate. You know what you need to do. Keep those two guys." All right. Next question is coming from you, Will.
Yeah. Let me pull it back up on my who'd you rather list. Okay, Chris Olave or Michael Thomas?
Well, Thomas is injured again. So and Olave has now shown multiple weeks. He led the Saints in receiving this past week. Ceiling is higher. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go Olave.
Wow.
I know
just
that's
love
crazy.
hearing it out. Not that I disagree, like Brian or anything like that. I just love hearing it out loud. You know what I mean? Because like 3 weeks ago, before the season started, you would have told me Chris Olave over Michael Thomas. I would have said you're nuts. But It's not that crazy now. I mean, he got 12 targets last week.
Yeah, I think 148, 150 yards receiving in week 3. Scored a touchdown, 2-point conversion early. I mean, he's been producing since week 1. And while Thomas looked amazing week 1, he's already been injured, and it's like we've been down that road before.
Yeah, and he might be the better archetype for the Jameis Winston-led offense, where Olave is going to be that guy that gets down the field. I think he leads the NFL right now in air targets, like number of yards that the player is being targeted down the field per game. And so he's giving you that big playability. He was always a good prospect, obviously first round player. I don't hate it. It's just crazy. I love hearing it out loud. Like these like the Patterson versus Eckler thing. It's crazy hearing it out loud.
Yeah, it's insane that was even a viable question on our fantasy show going into week 4. I'm going to throw the same question back at you, but I'm going to slightly change it. What if Andy Dalton is the quarterback instead of Jameis Winston, Olave, or Michael Thomas?
Yeah, then I would guess I would go Michael Thomas because Andy Dalton is that check down sort of intermediate passer guy, probably a little bit more like that Drew Brees type. So yeah, I think that's a great point. It depends on who the quarterback is. Is there like a little bit of a controversy brewing, Brian, or
Well, not necessarily. And Dennis Allen said that he's not planning on making a quarterback change, but we reported on Legit Football last week that, or maybe it was in Monday, maybe it was yesterday's, that some of the beat reporters are suggesting that they need to make the change to Andy Dalton, and that we know the Jameis Winston experience. LASIK didn't fix it. He's thrown 5 interceptions in the last 2 games. He basically only has 1 quarter of good, solid quarterback play, and he looked great. But that's the thing. He will tease you with his potential. but that's a small portion compared to, like, he'll throw the 33 touchdowns followed by the 30 interceptions. The problem is the 30 interceptions hurt you more than the 33 touchdowns help you. And that's the reason why his Bucs teams never had winning records, and they went like 6-10 and 7-9. And that's what we're seeing with the Saints. The Saints have a very good defense. They have a lot of playmakers, and their offense is still not moving the ball. I would want to consider Andy Dalton, if for no other reason than he's less turnover prone. He may not be exciting, but he can at least allow those playmakers to make some plays, and this defense maybe give them a chance to stay in the game more. So they at least should be considering the question. Hey, tied onto the same question, what do you think about Pittsburgh as far as their quarterback situation?
Oh, they should start Pickett, no question.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like,
yeah.
Why?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
I saw a quote this morning that Tomlin thinks that Trubisky is getting much better. I'm like, no, that offense is
not football.
The offense has looked horrible. I picked Pittsburgh to cover last week, mainly because I thought the Browns would win, but that the Steelers would keep it close. But I underestimated just how bad that Steelers offense is. The offensive line, the quarterback play, no room for the running backs. They have talented wide receivers, but not a quarterback that can really get them the ball consistently, especially down the field. Why not pick it? You know, hey, Tomlin, if you want to keep that never had a losing record thing going, you might want to make a change.
Yeah, and the Pickett thing too, not to go too long on it, but the thing with Pickett coming into the draft was that he was the quote-unquote most pro-ready prospect. And so you can't make the argument that you throw him in here and he's just not ready and he's just going to get shredded. I think I would be surprised if he's not the starting quarterback by week 6.
How much worse can it get? That's the thing. Your offense is doing nothing. Your defense won you that game against the Bengals, so you're basically a blocked extra point away from being 0-3 right now. So you might as well. All right, let's hear another one of your would you rather questions. We got a little under 2 minutes left here.
Yeah, so this one's kind of fun. Saquon or Jonathan Taylor?
Oh, that is fun. Oh, my instinct is Saquon. I got to say my instinct is Saquon. I have not watched much. I try to watch all the games in some capacity, legit football for this podcast. We try to cover the NFL, but I have watched just as a default more of the Giants games. Saquon looks like the old Saquon. And I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor doesn't have that, but there's something up with the Colts offense. Even with the offensive line problems that the Giants have, Saquon is still producing. The Colts are having offensive line problems. Jonathan Taylor's not producing. I don't know if that's game plan oriented. They're getting behind. Maybe the Giants have just kind of played those closer games. They're able to run the ball more. But I just don't. That Colts offense worries me. Even in this win against the Chiefs, they had trouble moving the ball. Am I crazy to go Saquon here?
Not at all. No, I don't think so. I mean, he's the running back 1 on the season so far. He looks back to his normal self. The Giants' offensive line did look bad yesterday, but that's a great Cowboys pass rush. You got to think Evan Neal, the rookie right tackle, is going to get better as the season goes along. Andrew Thomas looks awesome on the left side. I think Saquon, I don't think he can go wrong either way, but I think if you wanted to sell high on, not sell high, but like if you wanted to get out from under Jonathan Taylor, I don't think that's the craziest thing, just because Matt Ryan is not him, and that offensive line has not been what it was built up to be before the season for the Colts. So,
yeah. Okay, good. I'm not crazy. All right, we got 20 seconds left. I just want to throw out a few defensive streamers. If any of you guys looking either for DFS or, for your own fantasy teams, if you have defensive special teams, how about the Packers against the Patriots?
Love it. That's what I was going to say. Yep.
I would have picked them even with Mac Jones, but hey, you got Brian Hoyer as the quarterback. The Cowboys, we just mentioned them going up against the Washington Commanders, who just let up 9 sacks. And then one more, the London Vikings against that horrible Saints offense we just talked about.
I like that.
All right, good way to end it. Will, thank you so much. Why don't you let everybody know one more time where they can find you and where they can find Bettor Fantasy?
Yeah, you can find us on the internet, bettorfantasy.com, on the app stores. Just search Bettor Fantasy, BETTOR Fantasy, all one word. I would counter with Juju to replace Scantling.
I was waiting for you to get your plugs in first, but I brought.
I would go with Juju. He's a professional, man. Like he's not gonna break the world on. He's not gonna set the world on fire. But I think he's going to be that guy that's going to be able to give Mahomes what he wants. And we see the defenses against the Kansas City offense are still playing that too high zone defense where they're forcing Mahomes to beat them with 15.
Especially the Colts. The first two teams didn't really do that. The Chargers and the Cardinals. The Colts did, and they won. So I think we're going to see more defenses doing those two high shells.
Right, and so I think that just naturally lends into Juju's skill set a little bit better than MVS. MVS is that downfield guy that you just throw it up to try and replace Tyreek. Obviously, he's not Tyreek. So I think yeah, if you can get Juju, would you do Juju and Gibson if you're giving up ETN and who's the other?
Treyland Burks.
Yeah, Treyland Burks. I would think about that.
So real quick for those that are listening and not watching, we got an overtime question from J Cribs 881 with an add-on to the earlier question. He asks, instead of MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling as the receiver he gets with Antonio Gibson, what about Juju Smith as a counter? Juju Smith-Schuster as a counter? I'm actually going to disagree with you. It makes it better, but we don't know what Gibson's value is going to be once Robinson comes back. There was all sorts of reports that Gibson lost his starting running back role and it was going to be Robinson. We're already seeing Gibson. He had a great week 1, but his production has kind of gone down each week since. Whereas ETN, I think this Jaguars offense is really exciting. I think Treyland Burke's best days are ahead of him. I'm still kind of leaning on keeping those two guys personally.
Okay, that's fair. I would do it.
That's why you got 2 sets of data here. We got more overtime questions coming in. That's okay. We're going to roll with it. Apologies for anybody who gets angry that the show is going to be a little more than 30 minutes. Sebastian says Cooper Kupp and Darren Waller for Najee, Pittman, and Ertz in full PPR.
Oof. No. Ugh. I don't know. It depends what the running back situation is like. Like if you have no running backs, if you're like my friend Vic and you have Melvin Gordon and Rashad Penny as your starting 2 running backs, and you need Najee Harris, then I think that makes sense. Pittman's a baller.
If you got DeAndre Swift and he's going to be out a couple weeks, you're relying on Tyler Algier like I am in one of my redraft leagues. But yeah, I we break this down quickly. So we've got Cooper Kupp is as slam dunk a plug-and-play wide receiver as it gets. You can guarantee high-end production. Very well could finish as wide receiver 1 again. Darren Waller is not as slam dunk of a tight end prospect as he has been in the past. That Raiders offense, surprisingly, has not been very good. But Ertz is that's a slight drop-off, but I don't think it's as big a drop-off as it would have been in, maybe last year. Pittman has been great in Indianapolis, so that's not too big of a drop-off. It's a drop-off, but not big of a drop-off. The big addition here is if you have need at running back and you can get Najee Harris, Pittman, I think, has the ability to finish as a top 10 wide receiver. Yeah, I think I might do it. As bad as that Steelers offense is, hopefully they switch to Pickett at some point. Najee gets some more space to operate because they're able to move the ball better. I'm going to go with Najee, Pittman, Ertz.
I think so too, yeah.
All right, so we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for the overtime questions, guys. Make sure to check out Bettor Fantasy. That's Bettor Fantasy on Android or iPhone. Thank you guys for listening and watching. We will have our power ranking show tomorrow. We're going to be doing it every Wednesday with Jimmy Ray from NFL Stats. We're going to be live drafting the power rankings. Jimmy and I will alternate taking turns, and then we'll release the rankings on Twitter. So that'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific tomorrow. Thanks for watching and listening, guys. This has been 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football.
Later.
That's spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
We'll say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner.